It's true, John. It's true.
Okay, they got us both. We can start.
Yay! Yeah. Sorry, you guys are in the bathroom, but if you need to take a dump or something, you're already there, so it works out. But as chance would have it, this is not an unfamiliar scenario. Raziel has helped me with many technical things in the past. We've known each other for quite some time, and in fact, he built the computer I'm using. So quite a few years ago, but gotta fix that. No worries, John. Obviously, you can drop in and out as needed. But this was really, heck, mission accomplished, I guess. This is really an experiment, as the description says. It's like this is the first time I've attempted something like this, on the channel. And I would love to do more of things like this in the future. So appreciate you being the guinea pig, Raziel.
Yeah.
So if everybody can hear, obviously let me know with my volume, Roz's volume as we go. Where is your little, as a reward for everybody sticking around and bearing with us?
By the way, do your speakers have a headphone jack on them?
I don't think they do.
Say if they did, you could just
that would be
in,
interesting.
Like something there, and then only you would hear. There'd be no echo. But
that's true. Yeah, they don't, but that's okay. I can listen carefully. I turned you down quite a bit on the speakers, so
okay, that'll help.
That'll be good. You don't all get $10 for the Steam gift cards. Have you got the chat up on your end, Raziel, as well?
Yeah, I do. I can see it.
Okay, cool.
It's a bit delayed for me, but I can see it.
No worries. What you do get, though, hopefully, is your little compadre around Raziel right now.
Oh, yeah, let me get him. 1 second.
Okay. This is going to be your reward, guys. Trust me, it's worth the wait. We know this, John. We know this. Roz is a bit delayed in general. Metal, what's going on, Metal? There he is. I'm just going to let that set in for a sec. Digging the Lord of the Rings throw in Raziel's background, says Sumiko.
Yeah, I've got a lot of Lord of the Rings. You can't see it, but I have the OG handcrafted Middle Earth and Lonely Mountain maps up there. You just can't see them.
Hanging up. Oh, Laura, what's going on? What's up, Laura, in the chat?
But there's the old dog.
Now, how old is he? Obviously, you're away from your mic a little bit, so you might have to shout a bit. But
he's almost 16.
Almost 16 years old. Yeah, Laura, that's true. You're our local pet enthusiast, so you got here just in time.
He is a Lhasa Apso, Sumiko.
So that's awesome. He was in the thumbnail. I made it a point to put him in the thumbnail. So
he stinks. I'm going to put him down.
Sounds like a plan. Well, again, thanks everybody for tuning in. I know our stream usually goes for about 2 hours. So as far as time, we're technically still on schedule. But
yeah,
you got some new fans. And by the way, if you want more of and the puppy's name is
Razi.
So if you want more of Raziel and Razi, you've already come in and out of this stream several times. So we won't be offended if you pop out, go over to, go in the description.
Or just open another tab. I mean, you don't have to pop anywhere.
That's true. The point is subscribe. Subscribe to Game Musings with Raziel.
If you watch my content, you're in for far more colorful language than you hear on Imaginators here, so
yeah. So why don't you take a sec? Now that we've got you got me, they've got us. Why don't you take a sec and introduce yourself a little more? What do you do on your channel? Where can they find you? Like what?
I'll
what
give
kind
you a
of
general background of me in general. So I started my YouTube channel. It's Game Musings with Raziel, not Game Musings. All right, I've heard that joke 1,000 times. It's not funny.
Game Musings.
Yeah, it's a weak attempt at a troll, man. Do better.
Game Musings.
Yes, ME. But I started the channel a few years, probably like 5 years ago, and it was mostly just a channel that I used to rant about just random stuff in games I didn't like, and I never intended it to go anywhere. And then I eventually started streaming Final Fantasy XIV, and I actually became one of the bigger streamers there for a while, and built a huge audience based off of that game. and it kind of, and then I stopped playing 14 because the game started to suck, and I kind of turned it into an MMORPG slash RPG slash just the world's a hellhole type of channel, and just make videos. I still stream. I talk about game design, all kinds of stuff, and trolling and that kind of thing. I don't take it too seriously. I just have a lot of fun with it. I took it very seriously when I was in the 14, but now I just only make videos about stuff I care about, or the stuff that pisses me off. Outside of that, as a person, like I've just been a gamer for a long time. All this information already, but your audience doesn't. So I'm a professional stage and TV actor. I've been on like HBO. I've acted all over the country on stage. I'm also a hardware engineer. And this one, very well, I'm also a first dawn in 2 different EIDO styles. So you can see the armor in the back corner.
Way back there in the corner,
way
outside
back
the door.
there, and the other in the living room back there. But that's pretty much me, and I keep pretty busy with that and the old dog. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it.
That's a good story, and we will be. I think some of the things you mentioned will come up in this discussion.
Probably.
So we're talking top 10 games, and again, go subscribe to Raziel's channel. Do it while you listen to the stream. Yeah, it's a little different environment than here on my channel. But if you're one of Raziel's subscribers or viewers, and you're tuning in here, I mean, you're going to see a whole new side
on my VOD. Yeah, if you're watching this on my VOD, guys, or if I have a whole Discord full of guys. But if you're watching this now, or you end up watching this later, make sure you follow Imaginator. He does a lot of like Final Fantasy and RPG type stuff. So make sure you guys give him a follow and a sub. And Samiko, you're with a like-minded person. I totally get where you're coming from there.
Yeah, everybody's been really fantastic because they know I like to keep my channel a little family friendly. I have my kids on a lot. We do some Nintendo stuff.
I apologize in advance if a word slips out. I'll do my best. No F-bombs, man.
And I highly doubt anyone in the chat will be offended. But
if they are,
I appreciate your efforts.
Happens.
You just never. That's part of the fun. You just never know what you're gonna get when Raziel's in the house. So
yeah, pretty much.
But if you're following Raziel for a while and you're tuning in, you might hear him say words you've never heard, like hootenanny or
like early
dagnabbit.
I know that Earl was here. No, we're just getting started, Wooly. We had some problems. Wooly's one of my followers, but
hey, what's up, Wooly?
Earl's probably surprised I haven't told him to kill himself yet. I mean, that's pretty fun.
I mean, he probably wants to after the first 40 minutes of this stream.
Yeah, for real.
All of you guys are champions for sticking around. He's still here, he says. Shut it.
Right. Yeah.
And Craig, what's going on? Another esteemed member of the chat. Look at that beautiful green name with his evolved Mario head.
Well, let's get this started.
Let's get it going.
It's your show, so you decide how it goes, man.
Okay, well, here's how it's going to go down. So I already see some people being like, this game better be in your list. And by the way, you guys need to start dropping your favorite games in the chat, so Raziel and I can tell you if you're wrong or not.
I mean, there's a game that's good, and then there's my opinion, and then there's other people that are just wrong. That's fine.
Absolutely, exactly. And I imagine some of our styles are similar, so I imagine some of our games will overlap, and that's okay.
What people probably don't realize too is I'm a lot older than I look, so I've been around a lot longer, so I have a lot of games that probably people haven't really played. So
get your pen and paper out, because you're going to want to take notes of games you need to go play after this stream.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we start, let's get this party started. We've got 3 caveats to throw at you guys. Number 1, Raziel just touched on. We understand everything's subjective, right? Everything we're talking about is subjective. It's all in the eye of the beholder. A lot of your top 10 favorite games rely a lot on nostalgia. They rely a lot on the memories that you have linked with them. So going into this, everybody knows that, right? But we have to say it.
Yeah.
Now, another thing, spoilers are probably going to happen. We can try and be sensitive to like major spoilers for some of these games, but we're inevitably going to talk about
And most of these
spoilers.
games have been out for so long. If you get spoiled, like, that's on you, man.
Yeah, just go play good games. We've got Breath of Fire 3 in the chat and some Metal Gears. There's some good ones already coming through. Hello Kitty World. I mean, that's a classic. That's in my top 5.
There goes my number 1. Someone just spoiled my number 1.
Way to go, Earl.
Jeez, Earl. Stupid idiot.
And I guess this is less of a caveat, more of a transition into our actual discussion. So I don't know about you, Raziel, but for me, this was hard. And my favorite games are always shifting. Like, they usually stick around in the top 10 for about a year or two, and then they'll
My top
shift.
3 were rock solid.
Same.
Actually, top 4, but the others shifted around quite a bit, and I have 6 honorable mentions when we get to that. So,
John, how dare you? How dare you, good sir? I've got about a dozen runners up as well. So we're going to start with our number 10, and we're going to work down alternatively. My 10, your 10, my 9, your 9, until we get until we get to our 2s, and then we'll say our runners up or honorable mentions, and then we'll go into our number 1s.
Go ahead.
All right. So I'm just going to dive right in, and I feel like in the top 10, the bottom half, or is it the top half? The first half of the top 10 probably will be a little bit quicker discussions because there are number 10 spots. So my number 10 is Shadow of the Colossus, and I'm pretty sure you played this. And obviously this game is a PS2 game, and it's been remastered on the PS3 and then again on the PS4.
I have it on PS4. Well, PS5 technically, but yeah.
But yeah, I when I think back on... Sorry, I'm trying to fix my mic. When I think back on my gaming career, this is one of the first games that I can recall of like the artful games that like there's no dialogue, there's no... there's a lot of it's up to interpretation of the player. That's kind of a big thing now. I mean, we just played on my channel Neva, the new game from Nomada Studio, and it's like very interpretive and very artsy. But this is the first one I remember that I was like, holy crap, like this is different. You know what I mean? Like this is different.
Shadow of the Colossus for me was like the thing that got me the most, even more than the visuals, was just the soundtrack. The soundtrack and like the somberness, especially when you kill a colossi, and especially when they amp it up at the very end of the game, the same song, but it gets so intense. Like I played that with my ex-girlfriend like 20 years ago when it came out on PlayStation 2.
So old.
And I literally was like almost about to cry like a little girl at the end of that.
Right?
It was a heartbreaker, man.
And Metal in the chat, I mean, he's already plucking at the heartstrings with his calls for Arlo. Yeah, and I won't spoil that part of the game, but funny you say that because my wife and I when we were dating...
Artax dies?
What?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I was just messing with Sumiko.
That
one ranked that one moment, man.
I
was like
that
moment
Sumiko.
in Schindler's List where he says the Fuhrer is dead, man. Just sad.
Right.
I kid. Right. Calm down. I'm not an actual Nazi.
But yeah, when my wife and I were dating, that was the first game that she's not a gamer per se, but that was the first game she watched me play to completion. Was like, wow, like games.
That's a game you can watch like a movie,
valid, like meaningful art form. Yeah,
for real.
All right, well, let's go to your number 10.
All right, so my number 10 is actually kind of a newer game. My number 10 is Elden Ring.
Okay, a lot of the chat is going to agree with you on this one.
Elden Ring is a Souls game, as most people know, and Souls games are hard as hell. They are brutally punishing. It's literally get good or don't play. There's no difficulty settings. And I remember way back in the day when the first Souls game came out, it was Demon Souls for the PlayStation 3. And me and my roommate were playing it, and we were just getting absolutely wrecked every 5 seconds. And I gave up back then. I was like, I don't have time for this garbage. And so I didn't get into the Souls again until Dark Souls 3 released. And one of my Twitch viewers was like, hey, you should play this. And I was like, okay, why not? Like, I'll die a lot on screen. It'll entertain people.
So your audience got you into Souls games?
Yeah. So then I did Dark Souls 3, and I fell in love with it. And then when I saw the announcement of Elden Ring, I was following that game, and when that came out, I no-lifed the game for like a week and a half.
And that game's development cycle was like 8 years or something, wasn't it?
The game is huge. The open world is massive. It's just hands down like one of the best crafted games ever. Elden Ring is an absolute masterpiece.
Thank you, Earl, for being brave enough to speak up in the chat and be like, I give up every Souls game. That's how I'm in that boat. And you're right, Raziel. It's like,
but Earl played Elden Ring and he beat it because I made him. I bought it for him and made him play it.
Too big. Its scope prevents a tight and exacting design, says Wooly. I mean, you're not wrong, but it's all in the eye of the beholder.
It's true that the Elden
yeah.
Ring is the first Souls game that's open world. The other ones are linear, but I loved that it was open world, because then if you got to a boss that you couldn't kill, you weren't stuck smashing your face against it forever. You could go somewhere else and get stronger, and that's what I think they did better than the other Souls games.
Right. I've heard it's the gateway like Souls game for people like me that are noobs and like don't play Souls games. Like that's the one to start with.
Absolutely.
You carried me, says Earl.
I did carry. The worst look. Go ahead with your number 9.
All right, so my number 9, and I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this, is Fire Emblem Awakening. This is on the 3DS.
Played a Fire Emblem game since the Super Nintendo, I think.
That's what I thought.
The first one was. I haven't played one for so long.
Unless you count Roy on Smash Bros.
True. I mean, I'll dominate people with Roy and Marth and stuff, but yeah, I don't know much about it.
So the funny thing for me with Fire Emblem is I also have not played very many Fire Emblem games at all either. Like I played the NES one as an adult, like way later. And the original one for the NES was remade for the original DS, that was kind of my real introduction to the series. But Fire Emblem Awakening, you probably remember I was way into my 3DS when that first came out. And I carried that thing everywhere. And vaguely, Fire Emblem Awakening, come to find out later, was the make it or break it last attempt to get that series into the US. Japan was like, it's not catching. It's huge in Japan, but it's like, we're going to try one more time to get the US to buy this into this series. And it succeeded. It's the perfect balance for strategy RPGs. And I know you have at least one in your list, I'm guessing. Real-time strategy RPGs.
I actually don't.
Really?
Not in my honorable mention, I do, but not in my top 10.
Or sorry, tactical RPGs.
You mean
I'm curious. We might have to revisit this talking point, but in my opinion, Fire Emblem Awakening offers the perfect grid-based.
A grid-based. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah. But anyway, not only that is it's got this insane marriage system. It was kind of one of the first like waifu games, like where you could like romance characters.
Man.
But
is this what spawned all the weebs?
Well, here's the thing, because that's a whole other discussion we could have. But the cool thing about Fire Emblem Awakening is it doesn't do it just to do it. It's integrally part of the story, and the children that you have, depending on who you like establish relationships with, also play a role in the story. There's a time element to it, and it's just so cool. If you're going to get into the Fire Emblem series or SRPGs, like Awakening is a perfect place to start. But sadly, it's stuck on the 3DS.
Well, I'm not a handheld type of guy.
Yeah, and I've always been a handheld guy. So what's your number 9?
So my number 9 is Diablo 2.
Okay.
Diablo 2, man. I remember when Diablo 1 came out, and me and my cousin were playing it on his PC, and it scared the living hell out of us all the time. And I was obsessed, but like I didn't have a computer that could run it, and so
eventually, Diablo 1.
Eventually, me and my best friend would go into the college library, and we would constantly install the Diablo 1 demo and just play on the library. Yeah, and then they'd get pissed off and they delete it and everything. And then when Diablo 2 came out in 2000, I did have a PC that could run it well. And man, that game, every ARPG to ever exist afterward has tried to copy Diablo 2. And they just can't. Diablo 2, everything about it, the story, the music, the graphics for its time, it was just perfect. And there is another game coming out called Path of Exile 2 here in the next week.
Is that the one you've been? No, that's different than the one you've been streaming.
No, that's different. Yeah, but it could take the crown from Diablo 2, but right now Diablo 2 is it's one of the 10 best games ever made. Hands down.
It's a big statement that it could take the crown.
Yeah, I think it might.
Wow. And we've got in the chat Tactics Ogre talking about strategy RPGs. Like, that's a good call out. I haven't played that since I rented it at Blockbuster for the PS1 or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's a good call out. And yeah, Wally, we would definitely never encourage anyone to emulate games. Like, what? No way. No, we don't do that here. Rest in peace, Blockbuster. Yeah, if you bought Blockbuster stock, I'm sorry.
F in the chat for Blockbuster.
So that was your number 9.
That was 9, yeah.
Okay. Jacob Slagowski, are you in the chat? My number 8 is Mega Man Legends. We did not plan that. Jacob, this one's for you, my friend. Mega Man Legends is not a good game. Okay. It is. It really is. It didn't age well in some ways. In fact, I'm going to talk about this a little bit in one of my upcoming videos, but the camera controls did not age well. This was before the DualShock came out, so cameras were still L1 and R1 in Mega Man Legends, which is pretty painful. But I remember bringing this game home.
Sounds like cancer, man.
It's bad. I recently went back and played it maybe a year ago, and I was like, how did I survive with this? Like Jacob is here. Yes, brother. It really is one of the worst controlling games ever. It's true. But outside of that, let's put just the camera controls. Even the regular controls are okay. Albeit it's on a D-pad because, again, we didn't have the left analog stick either. But I remember that game just looking and sounding like a cartoon come to life, and that has held up really well throughout the years. I play it, whatever that was, last year, and I was like, this is still amazing. I'm still laughing out loud at some of these moments. I'm still loving the dialogue. I'm still loving the simple but intuitive progression system. It's just a charming game that I will admit is very attached to nostalgia. But I mean,
I played it on PlayStation, and I just thought the game was ass. But that's just me.
Even then?
Yeah.
What?
I just didn't like it. But you got to keep in mind, I was coming from stuff like Mega Man X. Like that was my jam.
And that's the thing is X1, 2, and 3 on the SNES. I'll spoil it now. Those are some of my runners-up. Those are some of my honorable mentions. But I think my Mega Man fandom, and I was never a super fan of Mega Man, culminates in Mega Man Legends. This is the spin-off game. But the craziest thing, the last thing I'll say about it is it's still locked on PS1 and N64. It's never been ported to modern consoles past then.
There's probably a reason.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe it's just because it sucks. Hey, Kevin, what's going on? Okay, so go with your number 8.
All right, number 8. So this game is also new-ish, and it absolutely blew me away. It was the first time in probably 8-9 years that I played a game that actually got me emotionally invested in the story and the characters. I thought that those days were long gone, but it is The Last of Us.
Oh, where's Sumiko? Sumiko, where you at in chat?
Not part 2, The Last of Us Part 1, the original game. And I got it on the PS3. I got the remaster on the PS4. I got the remaster on the PS5. We pretend Last of Us 2 doesn't exist.
Okay. I was going to ask about that.
But,
Sumiko's...
The Last of Us, man, that game, like the opening scene, right? You know how a lot of games these days, especially if they're like a story-based game, they usually have like an opening cutscene of some kind, and you usually they don't set up too much. You don't care that much. Just the opening scene where there's like virtually almost no gameplay other than like wandering around for a few seconds. Like, the opening scene, I had to pause after it was over because it was so heart-wrenching.
Really? This is the first time you played it, you're like, what just happened?
I'm like, this is insane. Like, this is so good. And I was invested in that game from start to finish. The character development, man, in that game, especially between Joel and Ellie, even characters that like eventually get thrown away and just die, because it's a horror game ultimately.
Right.
Even it kills you when they die. You're like, even though you've only known that character for 2 hours of story, you're like, no, you can't kill that character off. That character is awesome.
Oh, he was my buddy.
And the realism in like the interactions, even while you're just like wandering around and it's not a cutscene. So like the interactions between Ellie and Joel as you go through, you can see their relationship grow in real time. So in the very end of the game, and this is, by the way, something I think the show failed at, by the end of the game...
And quick tangent, did you like the show?
I liked like the first 3 episodes and then it fell off, went off the rails. The end of the game, is so impactful. And even though like the choice Joel makes at the end is so like, I don't want to say evil, but like such a gray area, such a dark place to go, because in the game you were able to see the relationship develop. You can go, I can see why he did that. In the show, they cut out all that stuff. So when he does the thing in the show, you're like, wow, Joel's a dickhead. Like that's how you think. You're like, why would he do that? That's not justified at all. But if you played the actual game,
Yeah.
you're like, no, it's totally justified what he did. I can totally understand. It was an absolute masterpiece. Every character, one of the best stories ever told in a game. And to top it off, like usually when you have a good story, like the gameplay in those types of games are not that great. But the gameplay and the crafting system in the game was great. It was fantastic. So
the groundbreaking story does not come at the cost of still being a great game technically.
Oh no, not at all. Not even a little bit. Like it's so good. Yes, Sumiko says you played it so many times.
Has an Ellie tattoo.
The Ellie tattoo.
Did you see that? Oh, the Ellie tattoo.
The game, yeah. Oh yeah, the joke books. Yeah, everything. It's just a very, 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 very well written story. The relationships are 10 times more real than most of the relationships you see in movies and in books. Like it's so, and you especially, because I know you're a dad.
Yeah.
Hey, you haven't played it, have you?
I haven't, but I've watched about half of it, and I know the major plot twists and stuff. I know how it ends and stuff like that.
So yeah, it would wreck you too, man. Like
yeah, that's one of the reasons I don't want to play it. I'm like,
just the beginning, his daughter dies, man, and you're like, what the hell? Why are you doing this to me? Like right at the start, and then like, yeah, it's just so good. It was an absolute masterpiece, and I just pretend part 2 though doesn't exist because they ruined Joel's character.
I'm aware. I have a friend that they had to have like a therapy session with me after they played 2, and so I know the twist.
I won't even touch it.
Sumiko said something interesting too. She's like, I love the morally gray kind of character arcs, and
right.
I think that's something that games can do that movies and stuff, can't do quite.
It's harder to portray in movies, but good storytelling, because most of real life is a gray area. So nobody who's evil or does horrible things, well, not nobody, but most people, 99% of people who do things that are absolutely awful, think they're doing the right thing when they do it. And that's the whole idea behind Last of Us there. And
anybody that's read any of my books, my fantasy books I mention sometimes, that's the theme of
that's
my
right.
whole
Yeah,
trilogy.
that's the other thing I forgot to mention. We're both authors, though. Mine is my book is not
it's nonfiction.
Not fiction.
We'll say.
It's nonfiction. And actually just it's right there.
What's it called?
You're Going to Die: An Asshole's Guide to Not Wasting Your Life. So but
there you go.
If you're interested in being in tough love, self-help, go for it.
And by the way, I wanted to mention that I had failed to mention it earlier when we were talking about Fire Emblem Awakening. I love the morally gray thing because in that game at the end, you come to a decision that you literally have to choose A or B, and it's right at the climax of the whole game, and it's not just like, oh, you're going to say the nice way, or like it alters everything. Like I sat there and looked at the screen for like 20 minutes, like what do I even do with this? So I love like the morally gray stuff that you have control over in games.
It's the best stuff in stories to do.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, go ahead with your number 7.
My number 7 is now moving into some newer games. That'll be Horizon Zero Dawn.
Haven't played it.
Dude, you have to.
That's what people tell me.
It's so good. And the funny thing about it, because I'm a Nintendo fanboy, first and foremost. I was actually a PlayStation kid all through high school, but my true heart lies with like Nintendo, I think, at the end of the day. And Horizon Zero Dawn was the big new open world game, right, when it came out in 2017. And like less than a week later, Breath of the Wild comes out. So at the time, that was the thing. It was like, are you in the Breath of the Wild camp or are you in the Horizon camp? And I was like, both, because I want them both. And, I'm a Nintendo fanboy. I'm wearing my Zelda shirt.
Right. I don't understand the whole console war thing anymore. I mean, consoles now are all just PCs with different pieces of plastic around them. So just
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Everything gets ported eventually.
Right, and of course, technically speaking, Horizon is better than Breath of the Wild because it was a PS4 game. The Switch is way weaker than a PS4, but graphics aren't everything. We know this. And when you put those two together, there is absolutely no contest. Horizon is better in every single way possible.
Well, it doesn't help, too, that Breath of the Wild is a game that the more you play it, the more you realize that it's very flawed.
Well, yeah. Well, and my biggest thing for any game is story. Unless I'm playing like, Mario or whatever. But like, I'm an RPG guy, and if the story's not there, the game's pretty much useless to me. Breath of the Wild has zero story.
Well, it has a very weak story. But to be fair, all the Zeldas have a weak story except for Skyward Sword.
Right. It is a little bit of an apples and oranges situation, but everybody was like, are you going to go with Horizon open world or Zelda open world? And like, there's no comparison. So the open air concept for Breath of the Wild was cool where you could climb anything. But like, other than that, Horizon's world is way more interesting, way more beautiful outside of graphics, just aesthetically. The combat is way more interesting. Breath of the Wild pretty much has no like combat like system at all. And the story is, I really do think it's one of the best stories of last gen. Or current, since as a PS5 version. But you've got to play this game. It's so cool.
It's on my list. I just haven't gotten to it. Is the thing.
And the great thing with Horizon Zero Dawn, which is the first one, because Forbidden West is the second one, and that's old news now too. But you can get the remastered version. They just came out with a brand new, totally revamped, new character models and everything version of Zero Dawn for PS5. So I'd highly recommend it.
I'll definitely give it a shot. Like people have been telling me to, and I just need to find the time to do it.
Jacob's talking about a difficulty spike in Horizon. I don't remember a difficulty spike. I remember it being really well balanced. Maybe I'm not sure why that is.
Go down on Mario Kart.
Sumiko's calling you out. I will say our first community night last month, we were all talking all kinds of trash.
I'll only play Mario Kart if I'm wasted drunk.
Well, either way, Sumiko dominated everyone everyone.
I don't doubt it.
It was crazy.
I don't doubt it.
Metal's talking about Skyrim as well. Well, we'll see if that one comes up later, but that's a good choice. I'm going to
spoil it now. Skyrim's on my honorable mention. It didn't make the top.
It's on my honorable mentions as well. We'll throw that out then. Great game. I mean, revolutionary.
Fantastic.
When the freak are we going to get Elder Scrolls 6? It's ridiculous.
It's supposed to be next year.
That was announced like 7 years ago.
True.
But anyway,
I think now you can play Skyrim on a pregnancy test. It's been out so long.
It's like the new Doom. You can play it on a calculator now.
Okay, so
number 6 for you.
7. No, it's 7.
No, 7. 7.
My number 7 is The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time.
Now, man, I've always loved the Zelda franchise, but I had to make a tough decision back when I was a kid between the Nintendo 64. I mean, because I was like a teenager, I didn't have that much money.
Yeah.
And between Nintendo 64, which I do have now, if you can see it back there, it's still up there on my shelf up there. But I didn't go
your original 64.
Yeah, my original 64 is still up there. But
Fite, what's going on, friend?
I didn't get that until it was in a pawn shop. It was old when I got my Nintendo 64 because I had to pick between the 64 and the PlayStation, and I went PlayStation.
That was a big fork in the road for RPG players.
It was, but I did eventually get the 64 because I was watching my friends play Ocarina of Time, and then I sat in my room for like 4 days, in my first semester of college, actually, just playing Ocarina of Time. And
so you played it later in the game,
way later, and everybody was like, "Dude, I can't wait to see you get your ass kicked when you get to the water temple. Like you're gonna rage, man." So I was like all prepped. I'm like, "Oh no, man, this is gonna be so hard," right? And then I got to the water temple and I beat it in my first try without even getting stuck. I don't know how. I was just like, because after I played the game later and I've gotten stuck on the water temple 100 times, where I'm like, I don't remember what to do. But the first time I ever played through it, I was like, what are they talking about?
Dude, what makes it a nightmare is the UI, where you have to keep equipping and unequipping the metal boots. It's like, I got to go through this sluggish menu like every 3 seconds.
But the biggest thing, the reason why Ocarina of Time made it on my list overall, though, was, I mean, just the ocarina. I loved the flute that you get in Link to the Past. And when they made it a major part of the story, and I'll be honest, man, I'm a slut for time travel in games. Like when it's done well,
Yeah.
When it's
Oh,
done
we're going to talk
poorly,
about that
it
later.
sucks. It sucks when it's not done well. But the time travel they did in Ocarina of Time was fantastic. The music, I think, is still the best music out of any Zelda game ever made. My only critique I have about Zelda Ocarina of Time is they never put in Link's actual theme in the overworld.
Did they
the actual
not?
Zelda theme? It's not in there. It was in Majora's Mask, but it was not in Ocarina of Time. But everything else about the game was amazing.
I never noticed that.
It was so good.
We have some PTSD going on in the chat with the water temple.
And Ocarina of Time is actually the Zelda game in the chronological order, for those of you who don't, aren't a big nerd like me, is where all the other timelines split off, is off of Ocarina of Time.
Because, Nintendo's half-baked timeline that they came up with like 30 years into the series.
It's not a timeline, it's a retcon. But still,
yeah. And I love with each installment, they're like, let's remake the timeline a little bit.
So this one is in between Link to the Past and Twilight Princess.
Yeah, and it's off to the side on like another page.
Yeah. But anyway.
So
that was my number 7.
If we need to drop a like some self-help phone numbers or something in the chat for those going through PTSD talking about the water temple, we will do that. That was your number 7.
Yep. Oh, my original PlayStation is still up there too. You can't see it.
Oh my gosh.
Behind, but it's up there. Yeah. Good
We're
times.
going to move on to number 6?
Yeah, do number 6. Go for it, man.
My number 6 is, and my chat will definitely have probably a few things to say about this because we've recently played it, Silent Hill 2. And I'm going to go with the remake that just came out last month.
I didn't play the remake, but I did play the original.
So here's my thing, and that's good to know. The remake surpasses the original in every way, which I never thought I would say. Because the original is almost a perfect survival horror game.
Yeah, it was really good. I would say in my opinion, the only Silent Hill that I liked more was The Room. That was 4.
Oh, that was good. That's 4. Yeah. That was good too. Where you're locked in your apartment.
Yeah, but 2 was great. 2 was fantastic.
Yeah, so for me, 2 is one of those games that sort of transcends being just a game. It's like more than the sum of its parts, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah, for sure.
You play Resident Evil, and it's like monsters. It's jump scares. It's monsters. It's sensationalized violence.
Silent Hill that's so good is the gameplay is not even that good. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and by the way, the remake, it's still, not the best, but like it definitely enhances the combat system. But it's just such a deep, like miserable look into the darkest parts of like the human condition. If to get all philosophical, but yet everybody can relate to it, and it deals with crazy heavy issues like abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse. It deals with crazy issues in such a tactful and reverent way. And there's just, especially in the remake, I won't spoil anything, but the more layers you peel, like the more this game just makes you sit back and just think like, holy crap. Like I've never thought I would play a survival horror game that changes the way I see the world, if that makes sense.
No, especially in a survival game. I mean, games have changed my view of the world, but a survival game, that's much harder to do.
That's rare. Yeah, and like Resident Evil, don't get me wrong, I don't want to diss them because they're amazing, but like just Silent Hill 2 is like nothing else out there. And the remake was so... I just never thought they could improve on the original, and they did. You definitely need to play it.
Well, the same thing happened with Resident Evil 2 remake.
And Final Fantasy 7 remake.
I'm going to kill you, dude.
We won't talk about that.
You're trying to trigger me, man.
We won't talk about that and until we drop the self-help numbers in the chat.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my number 6.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. So my number 6, I'm kind of cheating a little bit. It's 3 games, but I hold them all on the same level, and they're all part of the same series. So it's only fair that they are included as one single thing. And it is the Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver series.
3.
There's 3 games.
I forgot there was a third one.
There's Soul Reaver for PlayStation, Soul Reaver 2 for PlayStation 2, and there was Defiance, which was Soul Reaver 3 for PlayStation 2 as well.
That was on 2. Okay. I remember 1 and 2, but I don't have a lot of memories with 3 even coming out. And I'm curious now on your explanation, because these games they're not poorly rated, but they're also not like everybody's not always talking about them. So where are you coming from?
People don't know about they're a hidden gem, and I'll tell you, like, so the first time I played Soul Reaver, I was like this has a very, I mean, it's a time travel story, but it also has a lot of, there's a lot of hidden things that the game always keeps you on your toes. And every time you think, okay, I figured it out, I know what's going on. Like, I know who the bad guy is and who the good guy is.
Yeah.
One scene later, you're like, oh wait, no, I was wrong. That guy is not actually the bad guy. And it keeps going. And, you know, you follow the character Raziel, which is where I got my name from.
Oh yeah, that's the name of your channel. Yeah, that's true.
You follow him. I mean, he started out, I'll just give like a brief summary. He started out as a vampire, at the beginning of the game, he's a vampire, right? Raised by the vampire Cain. And then Cain, all the vampires evolve over time and get stronger and get new abilities. Well, Raziel sins against Cain by growing wings before even his master did. So Cain,
that opening cutscene is awesome.
So Cain rips his wings off and just throws them in the abyss, because if vampires touch moving water, they die. So he goes in the water, but then some god resurrects him as a wraith. And he's like, you and at first you're like, oh, I'm just out to get revenge on Cain and my vampire brothers, right? I'm
right.
To get revenge. You think that's all it's about. But it's so much deeper than that. You find out that the entire world that you live in was damned because Cain didn't kill himself after he cleansed the pillars that keep the world in balance.
And this is Blood. That's Blood Omen, right?
That's Blood Omen. I don't count Blood Omen. They're not that great at games. And
PS1.
And you can tell when they made Blood Omen that they weren't intending to do Soul Reaver.
Yeah.
Eventually you just find out, though, through, I'm not going to spoil everything, but you find out, you travel through time as Raziel, find out that when you were Raziel, the human that got killed, that Cain eventually resurrects as a vampire, the person who killed Raziel the human was Raziel the Wraith.
Really? So there's a time paradox with this too.
Yeah, there's all these paradoxes, and every time your character changes something, the world warps and you can see it bend and try to figure out what to do.
Weird. I didn't know that was part of the game.
Right. And it's all based around, like, life is a coin toss, you know, it always lands on heads or tails, but if you flip it enough times, maybe it'll land on its edge and people can change their destiny.
That's wild.
And it's so good. The voice acting is flawless. The music is insane. And for those of you who have not played it, Soul Reaver 1 and 2 are being remastered and released on the PS4
That's right.
and PS5
next week. It comes out next week.
And I will be streaming it for sure, but you've got to play it. It's an absolute masterpiece, man. If you love time travel, you love like vampire, dark, gothic stuff, this game is for you, man.
I never knew it had a time travel component to it.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
I also thought it was just the Liam Neeson revenge story.
No, it's not even close to that.
Good timing, says Fleete. Fleete, how are you, by the way? I haven't seen you for a bit. So that was your number.
That was 6. So we're on to 5. Top 5 now.
So my 5 we can probably blast through pretty quick because it is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now I'll put a twist on it, though.
All right.
Mine is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D on the 3DS. The reason being, it is a remake. A lot of people just thought, oh, it's a ported to the 3DS. It's actually a ground-up remake. New character models, new UI. Going back to what we were saying about the water temple, they actually went so far as to modify the mechanics of how the water temple plays out, so you don't want to kill yourself, which is, great.
Pussies.
Right? Softies. But the Ocarina of Time 3D is still Ocarina of Time, but I deem it as the absolute definitive version of that game. There's so many.
I'm just waiting for them to remaster it for the next Switch console that comes out. They need to do that.
I'm shocked they have never ported Ocarina of Time 3D to the Switch. Like, what in the world?
Didn't port Twilight Princess. So
it's one of the greatest. I mean, it is one of the greatest games of all time. Like
absolutely,
nobody's really disputing that, and it's definitely one of the best Nintendo games of all time. They've had the N64 version and the 3DS version, and that's it. It's like, what are you doing?
They're sitting on a gold mine, man. They could
remake that sauce, or at least port the 3D version to the Switch. I mean, obviously the 3D feature would be gone, which doesn't matter, but
Legend of Legia, I remember that game. I played it.
Which one?
Legend of Legia. He's
man, that's a blast from the past. That was like one of the early PS1 RPGs. The dude with the blue hair and the
I remember.
Yeah, classic.
Lufia was one too.
And it's like all those blend together with like Wild Arms 1 too.
They really all blend together.
Yeah,
they have the same like animation and art.
Early '90s, like we need to have a blue-haired guy in a fantasy RPG right now.
Right.
But anyway, so mine's Ocarina of Time. We kind of talked about it, but
We did.
I will die on the hill that the 3DS version is the definitive version.
Hey, I haven't played that one, but I'm not arguing with you. You're right, probably.
It's incredible. So that's my number 5.
Okay. My number 5, I mean, it's just pretty self-explanatory. It's Super Metroid.
What do you need to explain? I mean,
no, it's the greatest side-scrolling action game ever made. Symphony of the Night, which is also amazing, copied it. Every side-scroller game copied it. If you look like, I mean, I personally think the Metroid Prime series sucks anus, and I don't like them. But if you notice, every single Metroid where they made, like, they went back to some side-scrolling, like Metroid Other M and Metroid Dread. Those were more successful games because Metroid is meant to be a side-scrolling game.
The genre is called Metroidvania,
right,
which comes from Super Metroid and Symphony of the Night.
So, yeah, for sure. Super Metroid. I mean, the atmosphere in the game was amazing. There's people doing speed runs with it now. Like, it was just awesome, and it was the first time we really got a real story in a Metroid game outside of kill Metroids. It was actually like a really good game because I played 1 and I played Return of Samus on the Game Boy, and
that's a great one too.
Super
and the remake
Metroid
on the 3 again. Return of Samus also
Yep.
remade on the 3DS, and it's stuck there forever, which is
the only other Metroid game for me that even came close to Super Metroid was Metroid Fusion. So,
yeah. Super Metroid, I think too. I would say it's one of the first, if not the first game to really, on a 16-bit console, be capable of scaring you.
Oh yeah,
like
it was terrifying.
The dread in that game is way worse than Metroid Dread. Like it's crazy. The atmosphere in that game, it could scare an adult today if you played it.
Yeah, it was so good.
I have a quick memory with Super Metroid. I remember bringing that home, and my brother and I, it was just after Halloween, and we had a fort built in the basement, and we put our TV in there, and we had our Halloween candy in there, and playing Metroid all night. Woo! That was good times.
Sounds like
that was
a good time.
Spooky. Amazing.
Awesome.
Speedrunning for those games is crazy, says Fleete. And my son, who's almost 12, he is a Super Metroid speedrunner, and he's gotten all the endings, and he's always trying to beat his time. That kid, I actually have only beat Super Metroid maybe 3 or 4 times.
Really?
I've gotten about halfway through and then stopped playing probably a dozen times. But, man, my son can play that game in his sleep. It's insane.
That's crazy.
That's a good one. That's a really good one.
On to your number 4.
My number 4 is Chrono Trigger. And again, I'm going to say Chrono Trigger DS. I'm a handheld guy. And Chrono Trigger on the DS, the only reason I say that, it is the only version since the Super Nintendo version that was actually enhanced and not just ported like the Steam version.
Steam version's awful.
Yeah, it's horrible. And the DS version is actually very, very good. And it's even got 2 extra endings. It's like got a retranslated script, which is like a whole debate in and of itself. But it's just really polished. But whether we're talking the DS or the Super Nintendo, I mean, it's hands down one of the best games of all time.
Dude, it's Chrono Trigger. I mean, again, like if anytime you incorporate time travel into anything, a movie, a game, a book, you're inviting a lot of problems.
Yeah, it almost never works.
No.
And I would say the 2, I actually wrote this down, the 2 media anything that I think nail it perfectly is Back to the Future and Chrono Trigger.
Yep. Chrono Trigger is an amazing game. It's got a better soundtrack than any Final Fantasy game. It's got a better combat system than any other JRPG game.
To this day, it's still perfect.
The character development is masterful. The fact that you can actually change the world around you and the outcomes of the game is
like
unheard
in real ways, not cheap
unheard
ways.
of. Yeah, unheard of. And that was in the 16-bit era, man. Like,
yeah. A game has
insane.
yet to surpass it in most of those categories you just named. I mean, this game should not have happened. The Dream Team, I went and just made sure I double-checked my homework here. Hironobu Sakaguchi, creator of Final Fantasy. Yuji Horii, the creator of Dragon Quest. Already this is an impossible thing. Mm-hmm. But then you have on top of that Nobuo Uematsu from Final Fantasy, the composer. And then freaking Akira Toriyama from Dragon Ball Z. I mean, this should not have
Dream
happened.
Team, man.
Square Enix calls it the Dream Team.
Yeah.
And what you get is one of the best games of all time.
That game was 30 years ahead, for sure.
Yeah, Jacob, for sure. The the last kind of thing, and this game has like 16 endings in the 16-bit era. It's insane. There's no dull characters either. There's always like that character or two in every game that you're like, I don't want to play as them. Every character's amazing in this game.
I agree.
The last thing I'll say about it is the only thing that holds it back from being higher than like my number 4 is I am not a fan of the silent protagonist thing, and I'm going to have a whole video about that coming out in the next few weeks, but it makes sense for the time it came out, but as an adult now, it grinds on me a little bit that we couldn't get more of that.
I actually really like the silent protagonist when it's done right, because as you use the player can project yourself onto that character.
Yeah.
And you feel more connected as opposed to like Final Fantasy. You play like Final Fantasy VI, for example. You're like, it's like you're reading a book and watching a story that's amazing, but you yourself are not inserted in that. But in games like Chrono Trigger and Zelda, you're able to place yourself in there, and I like that.
I get the appeal of it for sure, but I'm definitely less of a fan of it than you, because like I'd rather go for the admittedly riskier tactic of setting up who a character is and hoping the player likes them rather than having them jump into their body. But that's a whole other discussion. But anyway, sure. Chrono Trigger, I mean, hands down one of the best of all time. You'd be hard pressed to find a top 50 game list anywhere that Chrono Trigger's not in.
Dude, if Chrono Trigger's not in the top 20 for any list, then the person who wrote it's stupid.
Yeah, disregard the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ryu from Breath of Fire series does silent protagonist, so that's true. Breath of Fire handles it pretty well.
Yeah.
Breath of Fire's battle system I couldn't really deal with as much, but yeah, that's true.
All right. I'll do my number 4.
Yeah.
Pretty quick, because I don't think a lot of people are going to agree with me, because I don't think a lot of people have even played it. But I'm just going to come out and say it. The 4th best game ever made is World of Warcraft. I mean,
now we're getting into your MMO roots.
Yeah, the game is in its 20th anniversary, and it's still the highest subbed MMO of all time. And still to this day, they're still adding more to it. They still upgrade the graphics. They still add all this stuff to it. People are obsessed. Tens of thousands of people go to BlizzCon for World of Warcraft stuff. It's just, I mean, even if you don't like MMOs, you never play World of Warcraft or never intend to, the entire game industry has been permanently changed by that game. Leak speak, saying things like epic and all that stuff all came from WoW. I mean, like we got Leroy Jenkins. It was on game shows and game show questions like Jeopardy. Like everything about WoW like fundamentally changed how any company approaches any game that has any kind of online connectivity. And you can't deny that like a game that can go for 20 years and still be as popular it is, you can't deny that it's one of the best games ever made.
Leroy in the chat.
Yep. Yep.
And don't take this the wrong way, but the way I'm thinking of it is World of Warcraft was as far as like the sensation that it was kind of like the first Fortnite, right? Like Fortnite is culture. It's not just a game, it's culture.
Yeah, World of Warcraft was considered the first 3rd-gen MMO. Before World of Warcraft, every MMO was a sandbox game. World of Warcraft was the very first theme park kind of MMO. And it had some sandbox elements. Now over time, those have all kind of gone away, and it's more of a seasonal game now. But it's still like it fundamentally changed what anybody thought an MMO could even be when it came out. Like Blizzard literally caught lightning in a bottle when they made it. They had no idea that it would be that popular. When they released it, they thought they would get maybe 250,000 to 500,000 sales is what they were planning when it came out. And like the first weekend, it sold like 3 million, and they had to like rush and add new servers. And at its peak in Wrath of the Lich King, it hit almost 14 million players simultaneously. Like it was insane. No other MMO has come close.
Well, and I'm not MMOs are like a different language to me. Like I don't get them at all. But even I know World of Warcraft. Like it's that
everybody
knows
it's a milestone
what it is in gaming,
right? In
the industry,
even people that have never played a video game in their life, if you say World of Warcraft, they know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it deserves
do you
to
still
be
play
where
it today? You still play it?
I run a guild on it, but I only play like to raid. So I don't like no life that game. I haven't for a long time. I play it like when I'm in the deepest of a new season. I'll play maybe 9 hours a week. Like I don't play it like I used to.
But that's cool, and it's what, like over a decade old now.
It's 20 years old.
20 years old. Holy
His 20th
crap.
anniversary was last month.
That's crazy to think about.
Came out in November of 2004.
We're old, dude.
Yeah, I know.
That's
You
crazy.
need to remind me.
Is there any MMO or WoW players in the chat? Let me know.
I know Earl is, but he left.
Oh, okay. Are we at number 3?
Yeah.
Top 3.
Yeah.
We're actually doing really good on time.
I think I know what your number 3 is going to be.
Do you? I don't know. I don't know if you do.
Actually, I think the game I have in mind, I think, is either going to be your number 2 or number 1.
Well, maybe you're right, and you're not going to like it.
If you say Final Fantasy VIII, I'm going to punch you in the...
My number 3 is Final Fantasy VIII. John was guessing 9. Final Fantasy VIII. I'm not even joking. Remastered. The remastered version.
Its graphics aren't even its problem.
No, I mean, graphics are rarely the problem, right? So the funny thing about this one, I put it in my top 3, and like almost immediately I was like, that's the right spot. But no matter what I did, I couldn't figure out why. It was like, I've been stewing on this for days. I was like, why? Why is it top 3? Because it is a broken game.
I'm just going to tell you, you're the only human being I know that likes it.
That
let
likes
alone
it?
putting it in the top 10. I'm just
I've encountered so many people that like it. But
so bad. The game's so bad.
it's amazing. And here's the thing. Here's what I came up with as I stewed over this for days and days. Because basically what I came to is it's genius ideas executed really poorly.
See, and I thought it was poor ideas executed really poorly.
You're wrong, though. That's not it.
I'll tell you what is good about the game. Okay?
Go for it.
Before you go. So, obviously, it's a Final Fantasy, so the music is second to none. The music was great.
Oh, I think it's one of the best OSTs in the series.
I'd argue it's in the top 5 for sure for its OST.
Yeah.
The first disc was good. And then you could see everything fall apart in disc 2 and disc 3. The reason why the story is so bad, they put too many coincidences in the game. Too many things happen that are like, dude, that one coincidence is fine. 2 is pushing it. But when there's like 8, come on, man. And then my biggest issue with the story is it falls into the same trap that Star Wars Episode 2 falls into. Whereas we are told exposition instead of seeing it. So, for example, we're told in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, over and over and over and over and over and over again, that Anakin and Padme love each other, right? But you don't see anything that happens to support that.
And are you referring to all the plot devices or specifically Squall and Renoa's relationship?
I'm talking about Squall and Renoa.
Okay, the actual love story.
And in fact, in Star Wars Episode 2, the only thing that does happen is Anakin commits genocide and then tells her about it. And she's like, okay, you killed women and children. I mean, that people make mistakes. And it's like,
it's all good.
And it just proves that women love serial killers because that's what Anakin is. And he tells her and she's like, oh, that's hot. But like obviously I'm being facetious, but I did not buy Squall and Renoa's love story at all. And even when they're in the Ragnarok, and they have like their big love scene.
Yeah.
Squall just seems annoyed out of his mind by her. Even then, he's like so annoyed. And I get that he's like the emo late 90s stereotype teenager guy. I get that. But it was just done so poorly. And the whole witches and how I already hated I already hated the GF system and I already hated the draw system.
The mechanics are broken for sure.
Right. They're terrible, but I would have been fine with them just being terrible by themselves. But the fact that they took those systems and said, this is why there are coincidences. I was like, dude, just shoot me in the face. Like, this is the worst thing I've ever played, especially coming off a game like Final Fantasy VII and later going into a game like Final Fantasy IX. Which
that's the thing. That's
superior.
One of the reasons I love 8 that I realize as well is because it's so freaking weird. Like, how do you follow Final Fantasy VII? Well, let's just go all in and change everything. Let's get rid of MP. Let's get rid of
Yeah.
level grinding because enemies level up with you, so there's no point in level grinding.
Any
Let's
game
get rid
that
of
has
gold.
enemies level up with you sucks.
We're just gonna give you paychecks. You don't grind for gold anymore. Like, let's get rid of
Yeah.
equipment. Let's get rid of they changed almost everything about the series in an experimental way.
I'm trying to ask you. They experimented, and you say they had good ideas, but they executed them poorly. How in the hell did this thing make it on your top 10? How do you not even that? How
let
do
me
you
clarify.
Like
the genius ideas executed poorly. I'm specifically talking about the plot because you mentioned tons of holes. The thing with this game is
100%.
if you take the time and dig into it, it's actually a fantastic story under the surface level, but they executed it so poorly. There's 5, 6, 7 barriers for a player to get through to understand what's truly going on. So and you're right. A player shouldn't have to play a game 6 times to be like, oh, that's what's going on, and so that's where I mean where it's executed poorly. A player shouldn't have to do that. It was the same thing with FF7.
It's the exact same thing as Destiny, where when people wanted to learn the story of the game Destiny, they had to go to a website online. It wasn't in the damn game.
And this is what FF7 Remake did. It's you think it's bad, but look at these 1,200 different lore things. It's I don't
have my crucifix up. Don't talk about that.
Yeah. So we won't dwell on it too much longer, but I promise anyone listening that if you take the time and dig into Final Fantasy VIII, the story is fantastic. It really is. We have to agree to disagree on this because it's under there, but you do have to dig a little bit. And honestly, at the end of the day, nostalgia. This came at a point in my life where I had just gained my independence I had my own TV, I had my own PlayStation. It was the new and hot thing when I was right at the right moment in my life. So admittedly nostalgia, and
I will agree with Metal that you know what, Laguna's story was good. And
turning spells into equipment, he says, that is so cool.
That's the other problem, is they tried to do too much. They had too many stories going on at once. If FF8 would have been better if Zell, Squall, Renoa, who's that? Quistis. All the main characters, if they didn't exist and they just did Laguna. It was
just Laguna's story.
Yeah, that's all they needed, man.
Excuse me. But this sounds like a whole other discussion we could have, but I'll spare you the pain and we'll move on from it. But I promise you guys, FF8's a special game. If you give it the time of day, it's a special game.
Okay, this is actually a good segue. My number 3 is Final Fantasy VII. So 7 is that nostalgic game for me. It came out in 97.
Which makes sense because you're a couple years older than me, so that timing makes total sense.
So it's funny, I got Final Fantasy VII. I rented it first, and it's the whole reason I got this and one other game are the whole reason I bought a PlayStation instead of a Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
But how I actually got the game to keep was I stole it from this stupid kid in my school.
It wasn't Blockbuster, huh?
No, I didn't steal it. I stole it from a guy who deserted. He was a total jerk off. But I went to his house. And it was less. I didn't put it in my pocket and walk out with it.
He might be watching this stream. He might be watching this and come after you.
I think he's dead. But, I borrowed it. I'm like, hey, can I borrow this game? And he's like, sure. And then I just never gave it back. Which is funny later because then my little brother was pissed off at me and broke my copy of the game. And I told my mom, I was like, yo, he broke this copy of my game. And so she bought me a replacement, and it's up there on the shelf. It's one of the originals, not
black
the green
label.
bar. It's the black label. It's not a greatest hits version. It's still an OG. But 7, man, there's just something about the lonely, somber world that Final Fantasy VII had and how it hit. Like how you felt even after you leave Midgar, right? And you're out in the more green areas and everything. The story just...
that world map theme.
It was so fantastic. I think 7, in my opinion,
it's 12 minutes long.
OST. Yeah, 7 has the best OST in my opinion. Most memorable one for me, especially the City of the Ancients. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
Can you hear the cry of the ancients? Yeah, they used a lot of synthesizers in the game, and the materia system is still, in my opinion, unmatched. Like the combos you can make with materia and gear is incredible. The characters were all great. In fact, the only one thing I will give Final Fantasy VII Remake is they did a better job with Yuffie's character, because Yuffie in the original is kind of a nothing burger. She doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I hated her. I hated her
yeah,
so much.
I
And
never
after playing
used her.
the
She was
remakes, I was
annoying.
like, I like Yuffie? What?
Yeah, I
And
actually
Kate
liked her
Sith.
in
I
the
hated
remake.
Kate Sith too, and I was like, he is very charming in the remake. So I
He's
like
better
that
in the
too.
remake. Still sucks. But like Cloud, I love how Cloud is the best way they told the story is because Cloud is a very poor narrator.
Yeah.
But you believe him for the first 2 discs, and then your thing is your view is totally shattered when he realizes
He's
he thought
broken.
he was somebody else.
Well, and that had, nothing like that had ever been done before, so no one saw it coming.
And not only that, but it was the very first 3D Final Fantasy game.
And that was after the era thing, which had never happened before. I mean, that game was insane.
No game had ever killed off a character like they did in 7. I remember I told you about that my ex-girlfriend before. I didn't know her back then.
Yeah.
But she told me, because she was a huge Final Fantasy fan, she told me that when she got to the part where Aerith dies, she came to school and like was crying for like 2 days in school.
Dude, I don't know if I've ever told you this. Because we
What?
run in a lot of the same circles.
Right.
I knew your ex-girlfriend in 6th grade.
I know you. Yeah.
And I remember that day where she had to clock out and go home. I remember her mom picking her up, and I was like, what's wrong with her? And they're like, I don't know. I guess she's crying about a game or something. And I was like, what? I remember that day.
That game was... It's still one of my favorite games, and I'll go back and play it
What's up, Joe?
Every year or two.
We got a Vincent fan in the chat.
Vincent's a good character, but his character is more fleshed out in Dirge of Cerberus. But
Matt Mercer did such a good job, though, with him in the remake. As
oh,
far
yeah,
as his
he
voice.
did fine. His character
it.
is fine in that. Just 7 Remake is a tumor, and I hate it. But, yeah, so 7 is my number 3, man.
Such a freaking good game. Revolutionary in so many ways.
I agree.
Yeah, I had an extra thought, but we'll move on. But watch my recent video about why the FF7 remake story is broken on my channel, and you'll get my thoughts on that.
You can watch my reviews of the 2 too, but remember, there's a lot of strong language there. I lose my mind.
That's true. These are good These are good duo videos to go watch on each of our channels. Go do that after this.
7 Rebirth and Remake videos. I was unstable when I recorded those.
But you regret nothing.
No, not at all. I meant every last word.
All right, number 2. Let's do our number 2s, and then we'll give some honorable mentions. Then we'll go to our number 1s.
Go to your number 2.
My number 2, Ghost of frickin' Tsushima.
That's a really good game. It didn't make my list, but man, that game is amazing.
It's phenomenal. I mean, it's another open world game. Let's be real.
It's probably the best game released for the PS4.
I agree, and for me especially, and I mean, I think everybody would agree it's a fantastic game. But for me, the reason it got all the way up to my number 2 is it is literally like Sucker Punch was like, let's make a game for Colby Dunn. Like let's reach into his brain and just pull out his brain, and we'll just make that game especially for him. And that's what Ghost of Tsushima is. It is perfectly recreates Japan, because I've lived in Japan
the era with China, when China's fighting them there, is a little off. Like it's not.
Oh, you mean like Mongolia?
Accurate. Yeah, Mongolia. Like it's off historically, but yeah, I get where you're coming from. Like
yeah, well, and having lived in Japan for many years and know the culture, like they nailed it. They nailed the feel of Japan so much. So that's like level 1, right?
Sure.
Level 2 is something we kind of talked about at the beginning of this discussion, which I knew we'd come back to. Is you and I are both martial artists, and we've both studied extensively Japanese sword.
Yeah, I did Musa Shinden Ryu and Toyama Ryu Iaido, and that's what I was actually going to comment, was like how they incorporated to make it, because so many games that put katanas in the game, some kind of sword play, it's so like, I mean, for a lack of a better term, it's just bullshit,
Yeah,
like,
it's let's mash the button and let's do Marvel superhero
and it's so
moves.
Unrealistic, and it's like an anime attack, and you're like, dude, no, he would be dead 6 times before he got his attack off. But in this game, in Ghost of Tsushima, man, it's so pinpoint accurate to the.
It's
and
so
you actually
accurate.
Switch styles,
even down to the stances, even down to swiping on the touchpad, and he'll do the Noto, which is like the movement to return your sword to the scabbard.
And he'll do
It's so accurate.
Like, so accurate, like it's so good, man.
And not everybody will recognize how accurate it is unless you are familiar with it.
Unless you've practiced,
It's crazy.
That's one of the biggest things that stood out, and the ending for that game was amazing. Like
so another one of those morally gray areas where you had to make a choice, and it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do?
Yeah.
On top of that, so there's like that was already like, oh, it's a fantastic game. Just anyway, then you have the whole Japan side, which is very connected to my DNA at this point.
Sure.
Japan's been part of my life for 25 years.
I haven't even been there for 20 years. I need to go back.
And then I played through it in Japanese because I speak Japanese as well, so that was another cool layer. And then they even they went so far to include a Kurosawa mode where you can play the game in black and white like a Kurosawa. Right. It's like it's like they just went 17 extra miles just
and then
for
like
me.
all the haikus and stuff. And,
yeah, like they could not have done a better job.
It was great. It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was. I did not regret that purchase at all.
Yeah, 100%. So that's my number 2.
Very good choice. Very good choice. I'm actually, I'm kind of shocked. Like if I would have remembered it, I don't know why it slipped my mind. It probably would have been in my honorable mentions for sure.
Well, we're both going to wake up in the middle of the night tonight being like, what about that one? Man. I forgot about that game.
For sure. All right. So my number 2 is the sole reason I bought a PlayStation.
Oh, I know what this is, I think.
Final Fantasy Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics is the best Final Fantasy story ever made. It deals with issues of government corruption, religious corruption, going on over a fight for the throne, and how all the like.
It's the original Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it really is, and all the peasants and like middlemen are getting crushed, But the thing is while all these super powerful forces are vying for control, there is literally a demonic cult behind everything, controlling both sides, and your character is the one who stops them and doesn't get any praise because no one realizes you actually saved the whole world from the resurrection of a demon. Like that would have just wiped everybody out if it got reborn. And the soundtrack was beautiful. I mean, the tactical combat may not be for everybody, I get that, but the dialogue was perfect. The combat, I had a lot of fun building characters and doing things in the game. It's a long game.
Is that like what, 50, 60 hours?
It's probably, if your first playthrough, it'll probably take you probably somewhere closer to 80.
Wow. Okay.
But it's, I can beat it now that I know it inside now. I can beat it now in like 25 or 30, but
I played a few hours of it. I couldn't get into it.
The story is unparalleled. If you haven't, like, it's worth, even if you hate tactical games, the story can't be beat. It's so good. Final Fantasy
and the soundtrack
Tactics,
is I know the soundtrack pretty well, and it's amazing.
And the cutscenes, the art for Final Fantasy Tactics. I have a poster of it. You can't see it over there, but the art is never really used. It's like that kind of more closer to like chibi art a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's so unique, and I've never seen another game use.
And his name escapes me, but he did a ton. He still to this day does a lot of FF work.
Yeah, it's
that
so
concept
good.
Designer.
It's so good, and so if you haven't played Final Fantasy Tactics, you should play it.
I'm hoping that rumored remake is true, so I can give it another chance.
I don't know, man. Remakes. Every time I hear remake now, after getting abused
you've been burned too hard.
Every time they're like, "Hey, we're remaking this," I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Just totally rape my childhood some more. That's cool.
Yeah,
I don't care."
Now, speaking of which, you want me to ruin your sleep for the next week?
Sure.
In Final Fantasy VIII, if you go to the card tutorial in the menu and you look at the history of Triple Triad, which is the card game, the in-world card game in Final Fantasy VIII, you will see that it originates in the world of Ivalice, which is where FF Tactics comes from. So technically, FF Tactics is an FF8 spinoff.
Well, and no, Tactics came out before 8.
I know, I'm just joking.
Delita Metal. Delita is a good guy. You think he does some bad things, but he's a good guy. And for those of you guys who don't know, this is an interesting tidbit. The writer for Final Fantasy Tactics was invited to write a whole new tactics story in Final Fantasy XIV, which is an MMO, because Final Fantasy XIV's world is Ivalice. And so you go back to all the old locations, and you find out that the tactics creator said he couldn't finish the story that he wanted in the original Tactics because he didn't get the approval because the game would take up more than one disc. and he wasn't allowed to do that. So he actually shows you the real ending because Tactics is told literally as a storybook.
Yeah,
and
I
he
love
tells
that.
the real ending.
That kind of meta
in
thing
Final
is so
Fantasy
cool.
14, where actually Ramza, Delita has a kid with Ramza's sister, and Ramza and Orlandu, Thunder God Sid, and all those guys, they all died, and their bodies, their souls actually were holding down Ultima,
That's so cool.
preventing her from resurrecting, because Ultima, the body Ultima needed to get her pure form, was your character in Final Fantasy 14. So when your character confronts her, he helps you. All the main characters from Tactics, their spirits show up, coming from Hydaelyn the Crystal, and help you beat her. And when you beat her, Delita and Ramza are reunited, and they're like best friends again. So it was so good.
Well,
so
and the
good.
game's legacy is so big that even Final Fantasy 12 takes place technically in the same world.
It takes place in Ivalice as
I mean,
well.
like, this is probably the only case in the series history where multiple
Keep them on the same
games
planet.
take place in the same world.
Tactics 12 and 14.
And it's linked with 14, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wild
Yeah,
stuff.
you should look it up, Melly. There's the cutscenes for it are up. You should look up. Just look up Return to Ivalice, and you'll be able to watch all the cutscenes if you're interested.
Dude, Metal knows his stuff with Final Fantasy, so that's really cool that you're in the chat right now, Metal. And I don't know if you saw Wally Ram. After the Warcraft 3 remake, I think all further remake remasters should incur a public whipping.
I agree. Warcraft 3 Remastered was so terrible.
John has been jumping in and out. So we're at our number ones, right?
But we got to do our honorable mentions.
We'll do our honorable mentions, but he's been like, I've been out of the chat. Give me a quick recap. So just real quick, I'm going to go down my 10 through 2, and then you do the same.
Okay.
My 10 was Shadow of the Colossus. My 9 is Fire Emblem Awakening on the 3DS. My 8 was Mega Man Legends for PS1. Freaking still stuck on the PS1. My number 7 was Horizon Zero Dawn. Number 6, Silent Hill 2 Remake. Number 5, Ocarina of Time, 3D in particular. Number 4, Chrono Trigger. Number 3, Final Fantasy 8. And number 2, Ghost of Tsushima.
All right, my 10 through 2 is Elden Ring, Diablo 2, The Last of Us Part 1, the only one that should exist, Ocarina of Time, the Soul Reaver series, Super Metroid, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 7, and Final Fantasy Tactics.
See, I'm crazy curious about your number 1 because I thought for sure FF7 was going to be your number 1.
No, everyone thinks that.
I mean, it's
not true.
So let me blast through my runners-up real quick.
Yeah, just blast through them. We don't have time to really talk about each one, but
yeah, and then we can go over a little bit with time. Sure. I don't really care. Metroid Zero Mission.
Okay.
Fantastic. Super Metroid was on my runners-up as well. It almost went into my list. Link's Awakening for the Game Boy, and really the Switch remake. I like them both equally, but Link's Awakening. King's Quest V on PC.
I remember that game.
I love it. I love King's Quest V.
That's
Skyward Sword,
list.
which is divisive, but I love Skyward Sword.
A lot of people are like that too. They're like, "You like Skyward Sword?" I'm like, "Dude, it's the only Zelda game with a story."
Exactly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Link and Zelda actually have a relationship that goes somewhere. Imagine that.
So that one's actually on my honorable mention too. So I'll just mention it when we go.
Final Fantasy VII is on my honorable mention. Freaking love that game, but I couldn't put 3 Final Fantasies in my list, so that's a spoiler for my number 1. Sure. The chat knows what my number 1 is already.
Sure.
Super Mario Odyssey. It's the best 3D Mario game there is.
And I disagree. I think the best Mario game ever is Mario 64.
I feel like it's Mario 64 perfected. Symphony of the Night.
It's a good game.
So there you go, John. That's in my honorable mentions. Super Mario 3 on the NES.
That's a really good game. Although I would argue
Timeless.
Super Mario World is better.
Oh, that's a good call. Skyrim, we talked about. 3 more. Grandia 2. Probably one of the best battle systems in any RPG to this date. I'll die on that hill. Mega Man X and Secret of Mana.
Okay, we have a lot of the same ones.
Really?
So I'll just go through mine, and if it's one you already said, then I'll just say it real quick. But...
Yeah. Oh, and John and Raziel, we might need to correct John. He says Super Mario Sunshine, but that's incorrect.
No, that's wrong. You need to check your data, man.
Check your data. Okay, go for it.
So this is not in any particular order. I just threw them on a list. This is
same.
Not
same.
Yeah, so Link to the Past.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorites. Asheron's Call. which was the first MMO I ever played. Amazing. No other MMO has ever designed one quite like it. Shadow of the Colossus is on here. Skyrim. Metal Gear Solid 3.
Oh, 3. Snake Eater. Are you excited for Delta?
Yeah, Snake Eater was the best Metal Gear, hands down. So good.
Okay. Did you
Metal
see
Gear Solid
recently
2
that
sucked. 1 was good.
the voice actress for
4
the
was good.
what's her name? The girl, the main
terrible.
girl in 3. One of the bosses. What's her name with the one that wears like no shirt the whole game?
I don't remember now.
But her voice actress was a secret for all these years until like a month ago, and it's the voice actress that played Ariel in The Little Mermaid.
Nice. So yeah, Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake Eater, Link's Awakening.
Eva, yeah, Eva.
Yeah, Eva, that's it. Link's Awakening, Resident Evil 2.
Ah, that's a good one. That's a real good one.
I still remember, man. I'm going to tell a short story about this one. Right, I played Resident Evil Director's Cut, the first one.
Yeah.
When it first came out, and then I remember I was going to have a sleepover, right? Because Resident Evil 2 just came out. Me and the boys, man, we were going to have a sleepover, no homo, and we were going to play Resident Evil, And my dad was at the movies with my mom, and this is like when my dad was a big deal because he had a cell phone, no one else really had one. And I was like, I got to see if they can sleep over, So we rented the game, and I kept calling him, and he wouldn't answer because he was in the movie. And when he got home, he was so pissed that I kept calling him. He told my friends to go home. They couldn't sleep over.
Why were you calling him? Did I miss that?
Because I wanted to ask if my friends could sleep over.
Oh, okay.
So I sat there at like midnight and played Resident Evil 2 by myself in the dark. And dude, that game kicked ass.
Traumatized.
And the remake was amazing.
Oh, the remake is so good.
Yeah. Okay, next on the list, StarCraft. The first one.
Oh.
StarCraft 1.
Yeah.
Mega Man X.
Uh-huh.
Warcraft 2.
Oh, so good.
And
Tides of Chaos.
Yep. And Secret of Mana.
Wow, our runners-up are really close.
Yeah. Oh, and one more, Diablo 1 was on there too.
Oh, okay. And we triggered John because he is a massive Metal Gear fan. He's like, Colby, Eva's not a boss. What are you talking about? Yeah. I loved MGS 1. I liked 2, and I checked out after that.
1 was great. 2 sucked. 3 was the best. 4 was pretty good. Not as good as 3, but pretty good. 5 was terrible.
That's what I heard.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a whole other triggering conversation, but I think Kojima's a horrible writer. I really do.
Nah, Majora's Mask blows nuts, man.
Thank you. I thought you liked Majora. I hate Majora's Mask.
I hate it. Oh, that's what I like to do. Playing the same thing over and over and over and losing all my stuff over and over and over.
Anxiety attack.
Exact thing over and over while I have anxiety because I have to beat a timer and the stupid mask and turning into that stupid freaking body positivity Goron rolling around and smashing into things. No thanks. The only thing good about Majora's Mask was its soundtrack. The Song of Healing is amazing. But other than that, that game blows. All right.
Everyone in the chat knows how horrible I am. That's watched my streams. Everyone knows how horrible I am at puzzles and like Zelda dungeons. So can you imagine me playing through a game like that has a time limit? No way. No way. Oh, John, I didn't know you didn't like Sons of Liberty.
It's terrible, dude.
That game was hype when it came out, but I didn't. It's not that great, I don't think. But it was.
Yeah,
so
let's play
hype
a
when it
Metal
came
Gear
out.
Solid game where you only get to be Snake for like 15 minutes.
And remember, they pulled a fast one. They didn't advertise that. It was a secret. Raiden was a secret.
Pull a fast one, more like lie to me.
False advertising.
They false advertise just as bad as when Square Enix released the demo for Final Fantasy VII Remake, and they included the only part of the game that's accurate to the original.
The bombing mission.
Yeah, so stupid.
I remember your video talking about like, dude, this is going to be the best game ever made.
Yeah, because I played and I was like, dude, this is so good. And then I got destroyed.
Little did you know you were in Kingdom Hearts multiverse territory.
Dude, I hate Kingdom Hearts so much.
I know, me too. Me too.
I hate it.
So before I say my number one, let me say this. I should
probably go first because you've mentioned number one already.
Have I?
My number one is Chrono Trigger.
Oh, go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about it, but I think Chrono Trigger, all things considered, right? Because we both talked about a lot of games. If you look at Chrono Trigger from a structurally how to write a game and a story and at the same time incorporate systems that are fun, systems that are engaging, and a good soundtrack, Chrono Trigger is perfect.
It is.
It's practically a perfect game. I mean, I will argue, like Last of Us has a better story than Chrono Trigger, right? But everything else about Chrono Trigger is better than Last of Us.
It's the combination.
Diablo 2 has a better immersive world than Chrono Trigger, but Chrono Trigger beats everything else. So when I get like a game like Chrono Trigger, I'm like, everything, there is no weak link in this game. Chrono Trigger is almost perfect. It should be studied the same way Back to the Future is studied. Because when I was getting my my degree in acting, all that stuff, for plays we study Hamlet.
Yeah.
As the perfectly written script.
And that's how Seven Samurai is for film, right?
Yep. Seven Samurai and Back to the Future both are studied in film. Because they're perfect.
It's they're perfect.
Written. And then Chrono Trigger should be studied that way for RPGs, in my opinion.
And I say outside of that silent protagonist part, for me personally, yeah, it's like a perfect game.
Yeah,
it's awesome, and that I can't believe that battle system hasn't been replicated ever since. It really hasn't.
It's so good.
Yeah, there's my Chrono Trigger poster right there, right behind me.
I have that on a T-shirt.
You do?
Yeah,
that's epic. Okay, so my number one, the chat knows it. Throw it in the chat, you guys. You know what it is.
It's Final Fantasy IX.
It's Final Fantasy IX.
I knew that.
So I really had to think about how I wanted to Fleetay's like, I already know this. How I wanted to summarize this very simply. There's three layers to this game for me. Number one, like you were just saying about Chrono Trigger, it's just technically an amazing game. Just on its own merits, like no nostalgia involved. It's just a fantastic game. Square Enix knew what they were doing on the PS1 by this point. It's, in my opinion, obviously, it's my favorite game of all time. Sure. It's the best Final Fantasy in the series. It's just masterful.
I think 9 is the second best numbered Final Fantasy.
After 7 for you.
7, 9, and then probably
8.
6. No. 7, 9, 6, 4, 5.
Oh, Lunar Eternal
10,
Blue Metal. That's a good call. I love the Lunar games.
1, 2, 3, 8.
8's at the bottom, yeah.
The only Final Fantasies that 8 is better than is 12, 13, and 15. And probably 16. 16 was awful.
I'm in agreement there. But so Final Fantasy IX was similar to like your FF7 story. It came out right around my birthday. Stars aligned. Like I said with 8, I just kind of gained my independence. But by 9, I was fully like, I was at the perfect place in my life to enjoy a game like that.
You were kind of becoming a human?
Yeah, I was kind of becoming a human, figuring out who I was, and just everything about that game. Aesthetics, gameplay, story, like character, everything aligned. So that's level 1, right? Level 2, now that I'm old, like you mentioned, I have 3 kids. And the nostalgia means so much to me, and I was able to share that with my kids. So now it has, second level is me and my kids, and my wife actually, we played through the whole game a couple years ago, and each of us took a role, and I named the character that person, and we all read our own parts.
Yeah, you told me about that. That's pretty cool.
And so now it's a favorite game of my oldest daughter. She's almost 14. No, she just turned 14. And it's her favorite game of all time, and the theme song, Melodies of Life, not only is it just great and tied to my memories, but it's me and my daughter's song now together. And that's super special.
Nice. Sure.
And then the third layer is recent. It just happened last year. So growing up, I have a cousin named Steven, had a cousin named Steven, and I would always name him Vivi. Vivi's character I'd always rename to Steven. Last year, my cousin unexpectedly passed away. He was younger than me. And if you've played the game and know Vivi's subplot, you can see why that would be extra special. His whole story arc, his whole character arc is about death and the meaning of life. And now that Steven's passed, like, it just takes on a whole new meaning. Every line Vivi says as I replay it, and I'm replaying it right now on my channel on stream with mods. It's amazing, but I mean, everything just hits so hard. It's my original love for it. It's me and my kids' love for it, and now it's me and my cousins' connections to it. It's just a game that transcends being a game for me.
Sure, and that's what 7 is for me. I mean, don't get me wrong. Nine is a great, like I said, in my opinion, the second best numbered title in the series. Yeah, it was when I went into 9, especially after that piece of garbage 8. When I went into 9, I was like
Low
not
expectations.
expecting much, especially because the art seemed so different
Yeah.
than anything they had done before. It seemed like more whimsical and goofy and everything, and not serious. But you couldn't get a more serious game.
Dude, that game gets heavy.
It gets really heavy. I loved the characters. I wasn't a fan of some of the art choices, but the music is amazing. The combat stayed true to its roots. Like,
yeah, it was simple enough, but also complex enough to be
interesting. It wasn't as complex as Materia, but it was still 10 times better than that draw crap.
It wasn't as complex as the junction system.
Yeah, which is, by complex you mean retarded? 'Cause that's what that was. But no, like it's not a perfect game. But... No, I really love 9, and I'll still go back and play it every once in a while. And 9 was a masterpiece, man, and it's on my top 10 RPGs of all time list. A video that I did.
I remember that. Yeah, that's right.
A couple weeks ago. But it was a good game, man. I don't fault you for putting it number 1 at all.
Yeah, and then you add those extra layers of meaning that just come from my family, and it's like you can't beat it. You just can't.
Sure.
Well, that's a pretty freaking good list. I think that's two pretty freaking strong lists.
I'd have to agree.
Albeit a couple exceptions for you.
Albeit one huge exception for you.
Excuse me.
Let me borrow a copy of Final Fantasy VIII so I can take a dump on it. I hate that
Fortunately,
game.
I only have the digital version nowadays. I got rid of my black label. But John's calling us out for the fact that we stated about Majora's Mask being terrible.
It is awful.
Correct. The dirty tissue. That's funny, John. Inside joke.
There are people who hate Majora's Mask, and there are people who are wrong.
Correct. Sorry, John, but we still love you. But and Flete is he says one of the best parts about 9 is the contrast of the art style, which is deceptive because he's saying and the heavy themes, right?
Yeah, it's very whimsical art style mixed in with like a very just dark.
It starts as this like almost fairy tale, and then even like halfway through disc 1, you're like, "Holy crap!" There's genocide in this game.
By the time you get to Burmecia, man, you're like, "Wait, what?"
Like genocide?
Yeah.
Okay.
And not to mention that, let's be real, man. Garnet is the hottest chick in any Final Fantasy game ever.
Even above Tifa?
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're crazy. It's Tifa all the way.
No. I don't care how big Tifa's tits are. No.
I understand where you're coming from.
Garnet was chef's kiss, man.
But she's such a likable character too. Like
she's way more likable than Tifa or Aeris.
Well, her story arc is so fantastic, and even down, especially in the English translation. I played through the game in Japanese, and it does the same thing in Japanese. But how she talks at the beginning of the game, like royalty, right? And then over the course of the game, she has to blend in, and
she chills out. Yeah.
Like it's such a perfect arc for her. And that's the other thing that I would say 9 does better than most other Final Fantasies is every single character has a meaningful arc.
Right.
Not just one or two.
Right. And I would say that 6 kind of has that too. But I would say that 9 probably has the best built up and executed romantic interest story.
Yeah.
By far.
I agree.
It's so much better.
It's very much a Japanese culture thing where relationships usually don't go anywhere, whether it's games, anime, whatever. And very 9 totally kicked that to the curb.
It's a very Western thing for
satisfying ending to their
beginning, middle,
story.
and end of a romantic relationship.
Yep.
Yep.
See ya, Metal. Yeah, no, I appreciate you hanging in there. John, this is a no-brainer for me, but I'm curious about Raziel. Camp Tifa or Aerith? Tifa all the way. Aerith can go kill herself. Which is ironic.
When
I played through Rebirth and when you had the dialogue choices, I was mean to Aerith every time I had the opportunity to be.
That's funny. How can I put this? So, I don't dislike Aerith.
I don't either, really.
I don't like her in Remake and Rebirth. She's kind of a loudmouth that never shuts the hell up, and like she's always like. They just ruined everyone's character, so that doesn't really count. She's very sweet, but you can tell even in the OG that she's hung up on Zach. Like she's totally hung up on Zach.
Yeah.
Even though for some reason when I played the game normally back then, I always got her in the gold saucer.
You did?
Her. But I got Tifa in the remake, and Tifa. I would have to say I'm Team Tifa for sure.
Just from the story perspective.
She's got from a story perspective.
From a canon perspective.
She's got more of a backstory. She's got more of a connection.
They got the whole childhood thing. For me,
she's a better character for in a romantic sense to Cloud for sure.
And obviously physique, everybody capitalizes on with Tifa. But for me, she's kung fu, man. I'm a kung fu instructor. Like she cooks. Yeah. She cooks. She does kung fu. Say no more. That's all I need to know.
What you're saying is Tifa is your waifu, is what you're saying.
It's the waifu, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Team Tifa for sure. But
Tifa doesn't die equals better, says John. But
how could one? Oh, Tifa doesn't die. Okay.
Yeah.
That equals better. Yeah. Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
For some reason, I thought you said Aerith doesn't die. I'm like,
John, you got a hard thing coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, so hopefully you guys got a couple extra games on your list, on your backlog, because all of our backlogs aren't quite long enough, I'm sure. So add a few that you heard today on the list. Do you want to tell us one more time, Raziel, like who you are, where we can find you as we kind of sign off here?
So my channel is Game Musings with Raziel, and I do mostly RPG and MMORPG focused content. I'll do guides here and there, but it's mostly me just ranting about stuff I hate or things that are coming out. Or I used to stream quite frequently and was actually got pretty big for a bit on Twitch, but I don't stream there anymore. Now I stream just kind of whenever I feel like on YouTube, because Twitch is a woke sack of garbage, and I don't associate with that kind of stuff.
So you're on YouTube again for streaming?
I'm streaming on YouTube, yeah. So
make sure you guys go subscribe and ring the bell, obviously, so you can see when he goes live.
You'll see a lot of me playing in the next few weeks. Ashes of Creation and Path of Exile 2, and
which you have like beta access for, right?
I have alpha access. Ashes of Creation, and then Path of Exile 2 comes out in a week, so I'll be this Friday, and I'll be playing that too. So
those are always entertaining. I was watching you streaming the other day, and like his hair is like disappearing, and like assets are coming in and out of the screen.
The alpha is pretty buggy, but it's a fun game. So, yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. And just as a heads up, my channel is very different from Colby's here. It's we got much more colorful language.
A little more free form, shall we say.
There's no filters in my channel, both from you and from me. And so that's why I've been shadow banned on YouTube for 3 years.
Well, I'm very proud of the good work you did here today. I'm very impressed with the filters you put on. That's much appreciated.
Let me chat.
So go subscribe to Raziel, and if you happen to be watching me on Raziel's channel, I'm Imaginator85 is where you'll find me at Imaginator85.
Give him a follow, man. Give him a sub, especially if you're into RPGs and Final Fantasy.
Yeah, retro games, the whole 9 yards. Fleete is asking real quick about my books. Yeah, I have a fantasy trilogy and one other book. If you just go to, it's right there at the bottom left of the screen, colbydunn.com. That's actually my author website. I'm still using my author website and email for contact through YouTube. I should probably set up an independent thing, but for now, if you go to just colbydunn.com, you'll see all my book stuff there. But appreciate you asking, Fleete.
Yeah.
All right. Well, appreciate it, and thank you for the hanging in there, you guys.
The other book. Yeah, and if you're interested in a self-help book written in pure, my book too.
Where can they find that? Is that on? Just go to Amazon.
Just search "You Are Going to Die" on Amazon, and you'll find it. It says Raziel Reed right on there. There you go.
Your life will never be the same.
Yep.
What I'll probably do though is I'll probably keep this in my live tab as well, but I'll probably download the video and edit out the tech difficulties at the beginning so I can pass that on to you.
That sounds good. Then I'll upload it to my YouTube channel. Did you want to tell everybody the big secret, or you want to not tell them?
Oh yeah, let's do that, because I think it'd be awesome to do more collabs in the future if we can. Do you want to tell it?
Sure. Okay, so this is it. Pretty
Plot
simply,
twist,
guys. Plot twist. This is subverting your expectations. I'm actually Colby's older brother.
That's a Final Fantasy VIII level twist.
It's not that bad.
We don't have amnesia.
No.
Yeah, so the story, I want to harken back real quick. The Super Metroid story that's one of my best memories I have with you, I think, is being in that fort. Do you remember that on the Halloween night?
I remember that, yeah.
And I was watching you play it because I was still a little bit little, but we had rented it, and it was like, holy crap, like, this is amazing. So that was cool. Yeah. And I'm apparently the one that broke your Final Fantasy VII. And the brother that
broke my Final Fantasy VII game was him.
John's not surprised. Fleetay's mind is blown, though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm actually older than him, yeah.
Yeah, I look older because I don't have as much hair.
I have too much hair. That's all I've got.
So
that's what happens though when you don't have children and.
Very true. It does a number on you.
When you don't have children or a wife, you retain your youthfulness, man.
True that. So, yeah, I like go back. There's your incentive to go back and rewatch the video, so you can rehear all the stories with new context and new light shed on it. Colby has the old man glasses. Yeah, my eyes died, so I got to have my old man glasses.
Hey, I wear lenses, man, so it's fine.
I didn't know you did.
Yeah, I've been wearing lenses for 10 years.
So now that the cat's out of the bag, I think future collaborations could be pretty fun because we got some stories. We didn't tell the story about the original Zelda, how we used to play that and get our fix with that.
Yeah. Yep, that's I mentioned it in one of my videos, but yeah.
We definitely didn't break into our babysitter's house to play it. That definitely did not happen.
Yeah. Well, guys, thanks for coming and hanging out with us, and we'll do some more stuff eventually.
Yeah, appreciate you, Raziel, for stopping in, and thanks everybody that's tuned in for the almost 2.5 hours. Very much appreciated, and we'll get some more stuff going in the future.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was rad. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you eventually, right?
I got some new games to play on my backlog now.
Yep.
Okay, we'll catch you guys later. Peace.